Yes.
Okay.
And there's a Japanese angel on the screen.
Oh, she's gorgeous.
Beautiful
I
kimono.
want that top.
And there's also the top of another screen below it.
Okay, yeah, that's my other
Right,
show.
right,
I'll get
right.
rid of that one. I'll get rid of that one. I don't want to get rid of you guys. Okay, hey, thanks everybody. It's really nice to be with you all again. We were going to do this in November, and I know that some of you did follow along with the Mudra and the Diamond Spheres project that we've been doing for the last, well, actually good number of years, but the last year it was funded by the Robert Ho Foundation of Hong Kong with additional support from the Kipper Family Foundation. And it's interesting, we started talking about COVID because actually what I'm showing you today is the result of a totally adapted year because of COVID. And the Ho Foundation was very supportive. We won this grant to do this large project, and then COVID broke out. And as many of you know, working with institutions then wanted money to just keep going. Well, all their plans went out the window. And I thought, well, they're not going to give us the award, and I understand why. And Robert Ho called me himself and said, look, can you do something positive? I said, yes. He said, do that. Right? And Anita Chung at the Ho Foundation, though, was very, very, very helpful. And Anita Chung and Bill Mullen winning the William C. Mullen Award this year. I'm very happy his sister is here. Because between Anita Chung was telling me, look, don't just get planning money. Yeah, it's such a thing to get a planning grant. But anything you want to do it with a research and research results model. You want to plan that way. So at the end of the year, you're going to have research and outcomes and things to show, and you will have planned what you wanted to plan with a lot more knowledge. So it was really a change of like, wow, that wasn't how I was, I haven't built my team yet. How can I be considering the product at the end of a year? Well, building the research team was really one of the fruits of the first year's work. And we have really just a dynamite team, as you'll see from some of the participants today. And so after we finished this work looking at mudra are hand gestures. And hand gestures go back, called mudra, in Indian culture into the unfathomable past. And mudra have never stopped being performed, and they are robustly performed still today with rituals that are 1,000, 2,000 years old. And one of the things that even the Dalai Lama has pointed out is that the dancing and the movement in Buddhism has been, in his word, relatively overlooked. And he says scholars aren't looking at it, but it's one of the essential aspects of Buddhism. Now, we were asked to come in and document a 1,000-year-old ritual being reintroduced at a 1,000-year-old temple. And the miracle was that the three-dimensional mandala in the temple was being returned to the ritual that corresponded to that ritual mandala in the building. So this was the goal of year one, was to focus on the mudra transmission of the ritual, which is an entire language of the hands. And we started then to look at how is ritual transmitted. We started out talking about bar mitzvahs today. How is it transmitted? And very interestingly, it's with the voice and it's with the mind and it's with movement. But if you look at the spread of Buddhism, the mudra were at the front of it. The mantra were with it, but the mudra could transcend language. And so very interestingly, 1,000 years later, there's really great accuracy in the continuity of the mudra transmission. But it hasn't really been looked at in a scholarly way. So we worked with some of the top scholars, Donald Lopez from the University of Michigan, Christian Luxanitz at SOAS, the School of Oriental and African Study, probably the top scholar in the art. They all had a lot to contribute when it got to the movement. They just said, we don't know, we haven't even looked at it. And it's so funny, you think, well, how can you be a ritual expert if you don't even know how they do the ritual? What are you an expert in? Are you an expert in the text? Are you expert in the language? And so we put this all together with a really incredible team of dance researchers from the University of Roehampton in England, from the School of Oriental and African Studies, and also some of the top exponents of Indian dance. You'll see her dance today. And Tammy just entered. I'm going to let her get in here. Hang on. Tammy is admitted. There's Tammy. Okay. Tammy is Bill's sister, other sister. So when we got to the end of the year, we realized that you can look at Buddhist mudra, but Buddhism comes a little later in the game. And Tantric Buddhism, like you see in Tibet, the red-robed Dalai Lama monks, that doesn't come along till the 8th century. But mudra go back to inconceivable history. So I thought in terms of movement research, you can't say we're going to look at mudra and Buddhism and not look at how Buddhism got the mudra. Where did the mudra come from? What does it mean? How did it assimilate? And how did it help the ritual spread? And so we got Indian classical dancers, and we got Nepalese, Kathmandu-based, Newar, Buddhist, Tantric priest, a married lay priesthood. This Tantric priest who worked with us 35 generations. He's the 35th generation in this line. So the Kathmandu Buddhism is the most like Indian culture. And it's important to remember Buddha was Indian. He was Hindu. He was a devotee of Shiva. And he knew all these mudra anyway. So they're not something he invented. And then going on to the monastic Tibetan Vajrayana Buddhism, there's a chronological progression from the Indian tradition to the Nepalese tradition to the Tibetan tradition. And for the first time, we got a classical Indian dancer and a Nepalese priest and Tibetan monks to help us explore this mudra. Now, as I go on talking, I realize I should stop because we're trying to emphasize the non-verbal and non-intellectual parts of Buddhism, the things that actually help it spread, the actual practice of Buddhism. And if you speak a lot to monks and tantric priests, as I do, they're very amused, and they'll say like, well, you know, architecture isn't Buddhism, and books are not Buddhism, and art is not Buddhism. Buddhism is something you do. Buddhism is a practice. And I think that one of our speakers, Veena Rampal, said something very interesting. She said, you know, I was thinking about it. She's got a PhD from SOAS in dance and philosophy, which is quite interesting. And she said, you know, I was thinking about it. And she said, you know, religion is a Western word, and it's probably not the best word for Buddhism. So if you're asking Westerners to connect to Buddhism, religion's probably a clunky doorway. And she said, factually, asking people to connect with Buddhism as a movement practice, like yoga, people have an easier way to connect to it than trying to understand Buddhism as a big hoary religion. I thought it was a very interesting point. And then the other thing that's so interesting is the simple centrality. Mudra means seal, S-E-A-L, in all of its meanings. But in terms of ritual tantric practice, if I'm doing a visualization and a meditation, and I have a movement practice either in dancing or in mudra, the mudra is the seal. The mudra connects the mind and the body. I've got the body, I've got the mind. The mudra seals the entire intention. So the mudra becomes the seal. Now, you're going to see these 3 videos. 2 of them are 8 minutes long, and the third one is 10 minutes long. And they were just shown. Nobody's seen them since October 21st. This is the first time we've shown them to anybody else. And they're all going to be put into film festivals. And we're looking forward to sharing them and repurposing them. The other thing is University of California at Irvine. We had a dance professor and we had a professor of their Buddhist studies department in our project. And UCI is going to create a project with Core of Culture on this project in a collaboration between their dance studies department and their Buddhist studies department. And that's never happened before. So we're very excited about that possibility of creating this dialogue. The other dialogue that needs to happen is this. Half of the team are exponents of a tradition. And so they have traditioned answers. If I ask them, what is this state of mind? They'll say, this is a state of mind. It has 5 phases, da, 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 da. And they'll tell you the whole thing. Well, maybe the dance professor in California is interested in the same state of mind. And she wants to know how she can get to that state of mind. So you've got to find a way for the dancers to talk to each other about the same thing. So you need very cooperative people that are willing to go that extra mile. Buddhists don't think of things in terms of dance research. But when you bring them the idea, man, they bring everything to the party. And this community of interest around the Buddhists is really helping to sustain their tradition. And so what we're showing you today is an Indian video that will feature Veena Rampal, who's a younger dancer who's got her PhD from SOAS, raised in London, and Sharon Lowen, who I think would be a really good salon speaker.
Okay.
Sharon Lowen has been a famous, internationally renowned dancer of classical Indian dance for more than 50 years. Now, some of you know the early performers in Bollywood films were Jewish women.
Yep.
Because Hindu women were not allowed to be in the films. So Sharon goes back that far. And she is really a respected and revered exponent of classical Indian dancing and a really fascinating person. So the first film I'm going to show you is the Indian film called Shaping the Timeless. And where we took this approach was, after a year, did we want to have an academic kind of thing with all of these complex words and all of these cultures, and you don't know if we're talking about a person, a place, or a thing, and you just multiply that by 6 cultures and 3 languages, and by the end, you're not really communicating. And when the subject are the non-verbal aspects of Buddhism that are the things that facilitate their transmission. And then in the course of all this, I was the fortunate recipient of the William Mullen Award. Who was my Greek tutor at St. John's College. And the award was to his students that were carrying on his innovative work in ancient cultures. And so I was thrilled to win this award. I thought, well, we'll turn this award into the project. And then I recalled that Bill Mullen wrote a poem that he dedicated to me called Burnham's Mandalas. And it was about Burnham, who designed the city of Chicago and designed the World's Fair and the mall in DC. But Bill's approach to the mandala was poetic, historical, it was cultural, it included contradictions and moral ambiguities and the attempt to make a whole thing out of chaos. And so he took a rather unorthodox but very creative and very poetic approach to the notion of a mandala to share things about the World's Fair that nobody else says about the World's Fair. To say things about the design of Chicago that nobody else has ever said about the design of Chicago. I was so inspired by this, I thought, you know what? Forget this whole academic approach to showing our research. Why don't we commission artists to make videos with no words, inspired by Bill's poems? So I commissioned these 3 videos and I gave them copies of Bill's poem. And I said, I want you to make a video inspired by Bill Mullen's approach to the mandala in these poems and reveal something new about the subject matter. This is very risky, all right? Because I look at this cup, I love this cup so much. Shari, would you please make a project based on this cup? Okay, do you get me? Are you with me? It's white, it's round. And so these are the kinds of things, well, who do you say that to? You know, what kind of an artist, at what level of creativity are you communicating? And I know these people well, and they're great artists. And I really think they came back with the goods and really showed things. And so I'm very happy that Bill Mullen's family is here, because I think between Anita Chung telling me to make things have research results within the planning, and Bill Mullen saying, take a creative approach to a creative subject. Take an artistic approach to an artistic subject. And that's maybe one of the fundamental rubs in academia. They take intellectual approaches to artistic subjects. Guess what the result is? Okay. They take intellectual approaches to movement. And so it's like, well, it all has a role to play. But I think this is what we were trying to sort of respond to the Dalai Lama and say, we're going to try to bring forward some new information about these dances and about the tradition of mudra within Buddhism. So I'll begin with the first video. These are going out to film festivals, so they're meant to be appreciated and understood without a lot of explanation. And they're also, this first one is kind of dreamy. It's about how the relationship, what's the relationship with the great old tradition from a modern person. There's wonderful footage of Sharon Lowen from her whole career in it. And so you can just go with it. You can go with the dream. So I'm going to leave this to you now. This first one's called Shaping the Timeless. Here we go. Do you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't have sound.
Oh, I do.
No, I don't either.
You don't have sound.
No.
Huh.
You don't really need it, but
No, you do. Because one of the things you will get, I can also try to do this off the internet. You will get really incredible examples of Indian, Newar, and Tibetan chanting in this thing.
oh,
I have a thing online. I'm going to try to do it. I have the whole October thing online, and I can queue it up and find it for you, okay? So I'm going to try this one. Let me know how it works.
Nope, no sound.
nope.
Mm-mm.
Really?
Nope.
Ranger. That's very strange. Let me shut that off. I would like there's just 30 minutes total of these 3 films, so I'd sure like to get that sound worked out. Let me just see what I can do here. Volume on the thing. I can try putting that on and see if it works. I don't think it will, but I'll try.
Joseph, sometimes you have
Yeah.
to adjust the volume in the
No.
video, not
Oh.
just on your computer.
Okay. Let me see that. Well, the video here, I'm playing off the internet.
See, there's, I can't do it for you. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm on Vimeo. I'm on a Vimeo online right now. What should I do here? Let me make that bigger. I don't see a flame on that.
Go to the little star-like circle. Does that tell you, do anything?
I don't know what
They're,
you
they're
mean.
little, at the bottom of the screen, when you start the video.
Yeah?
Uh,
Oh, you mean the speakers?
Quality, no, that's not it.
Volume
Try,
is all the way up, yeah. On
that's
that.
weird, that's
Yeah,
weird.
it sure is. Does this
And is
work
the
now?
volume all the way, obviously the volume's up on your computer because we can hear you.
Can you hear this? Oh, wait, you don't want to hear that. Can you hear music? No?
No,
No.
Gosh. How puzzling. Let me look at the Zoom screen. Maybe the Zoom screen's on.
You could sing.
No. I don't think you want that.
yeah, see your little video bar is all the way up. That's
Yeah.
weird.
And
I
let's
mean,
see-
your audio bar.
Yep. Let me just see. Let me turn this thing to see if it works.
Thank
Oh.
God other people have as many troubles as I do.
Let me see if that works.
She's so lovely. I will love watching.
Isn't
her.
she?
And I love the setting. Beautiful.
Does she remind you a little bit of
Now we just lost screen sharing.
Oh, he's back.
Oh, now I got you guys back. Okay, let me try. Oh, I don't have share screen anymore. Hey, let's try the share screen again, because now I've lost my share screen, I think.
Okay,
Let's see.
I guess that's up to me.
There we go. Let's try this. Oh, let's try this. Let's try
Okay,
this and see what happens. Okay.
she looks a bit like
Can you hear
Shirley.
music?
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Can hear you, but not anything from your
Can you
video.
hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
But I don't hear any of you. Can you hear the music?
No.
No,
Yes?
no.
No, you can't hear.
Why
Can
don't
you
you
hear me?
to the YouTube on the chat line?
No, nobody hears anything.
Why don't
Okay.
you to the YouTube on the chat line? One of
Well,
us
let me
pulls
stop
it
the
up.
share. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can't hear any of you now. I can't hear anybody. So-
Check your own
Let
volume.
me window
Check the,
help.
yeah, check. Are we
And now
muted?
nobody can hear anything.
Did you
okay.
mute? He can't hear me, so it doesn't matter.
Now, can you hear me now? I couldn't even hear any of you. I couldn't hear any of you.
Can you hear us now?
Hear this?
Hello?
Yeah?
Now we lost screen. Oh, there he is. You
Okay.
hear us now?
Wow, that's so confusing. Yeah, I hear you, Merle. Thanks.
Why don't you put the YouTube chat, the link on the chat? One of us can open it up and share the screen.
That's a good idea. That's kind of complicated. Let me try though, because well, I'm just, no, only because Shoma, that I'm playing it off the October 21st full event. So I'm queuing up we can do that. I'll try it. I'll
You
try
just
it.
have to look it up on YouTube.
No, I'll send you a link to the whole thing.
Sure.
If you don't mind. Do you mind? Okay, let me try this.
We are a social success and a tech
Oh,
challenge.
I know. And I ran through everything this morning to make sure it still worked. Shoma, I just sent you a link.
In what
Your email.
Okay, I'll go and look it up. 1 second.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. And what time does it, at what point do you want it?
1909.
All right,
No,
1 second.
19 minutes.
Sure.
Thank you. You're pale. This is not the first time you've done this.
That's okay. So at least we know it'll work. Barbara, can you make me co-host, please?
who am I making host?
Shoma. Thank you, Shoma.
Anytime. Group work.
I think
Am I
you're doing it for
making
the
you
answer.
host or co-host?
Co-host is fine.
Done?
All right. I will share screen.
I
Can
can
you,
see it.
can you see this? Let's make it bigger.
Make it big as possible and go to 1909. First Indian video called Shaping the Timeless.
Can you hear it?
There you go. We're
Yeah.
right there. I can hear it.
I can hear it.
Thank you, Shoma.
There's no sound.
Still no sound.
I hear sound.
Who does?
All I hear is
Hey,
somebody who
Joseph?
doesn't have their,
Joseph,
Yes.
I've got Joy here, and
Yeah.
she knows a little bit more
Hi,
than
Joy.
Hi. Hi, how are you? When I was teaching, this would happen to me often that I would there's a little pop-up window that opens when you
Provoking rasa is the main point
Ah, perfect.
of Indian dance.
Stop.
so what was it so that we can do it again?
Do you know how you solve that? Oh, it's gone. Oh, Joy. So what Joy said was that if you stop sharing,
Yeah.
then when you start again, there should be a pop-up. It will
All right.
ask you to if you want to share sound. So you
Oh,
might have to,
But start all over from the beginning if you
yeah,
can.
you might need to stop sharing.
okay. So
Okay.
Shoma, could you please stop sharing?
I did.
Oh, thank
Oh.
you.
Sure.
Thank you. Now I've stopped. I've taken my share
All right,
off.
I'm gonna
Right?
call Joy again.
Okay. Share sound. Let's see if this works. I think it's gonna work. Hang on. I found that button and I hit it. Thank you.
Okay.
That could be the kicker.
But you probably need to share the screen as well.
Yep, here I go. Tell me it worked. Uh,
It says you've started it.
Please restart your audio sharing apps such as the media player after install to continue sharing. Please restart your audio sharing application such as the media. Let's see what happens. If I get canceled out, we'll see what happens.
Whoever
this.
said tech was supposed to make life easier was wrong.
Okay, now that can you see my screen now?
Yes,
There it is.
Do you see a dancer on screen?
yes.
Dude, this is very exciting. Now let's see. Hey, tell Joy thank you. Brought us a lot of joy if this works.
Who
Joy brings us joy.
Joy brings joy. She does indeed.
Thank you, Joy. Share sound, share sound. Here you go. Shaping the timeless. Kick back, enjoy the dream.
Evoking rasa is the main point of Indian dance.
Dance, sculpture, yoga, tantra. In all of these, we are really exploring one thing. What shapes of consciousness are available within the human form?
evoke a metaphysical state in the artist and in the audience.
Body, glance, mind, emotion, relish.
Sa ni sa re ma pa ni pa ma re re sa sa ni sa re ma pa ni pa ma re re sa sa ni sa re ma pa ni pa ma re re sa ni sa re ma pa ni pa ni sa re sa ni pa ma re sa ni sa re ma pa ni sa re sa ni pa ma re sa ni sa re ma pa ni pa ni sa re ma ni sa ni pa ma re ma re sa ni sa re sa ni sa re ma pa ma re sa ni sa re ma pa ni pa ni sa ni pa ma re sa ma pa ni sa ni sa re ma re sa ni sa re ma re sa ni sa ni pa ma re ni sa ni pa ma re ni sa ni sa re sa ni pa ma pa re ma pa ni sa re sa ni pa re ma pa ni sa re sa ni sa re sa pa ma pa ni pa ni sa pa ma ni pa ni sa re ma re sa ni sa re ma re sa ni sa ni pa ma re ma pa ma re sa ni sa re ma pa ma re sa ni sa re ma ma re sa ni sa re ma pa ma re sa re ma pa ni sa re ma pa ni sa re sa ni pa ma re ma pa ma re sa ni pa ma re ma pa ma re sa ni pa ma re ma pa ma re sa ni sa re sa ni sa re sa ni sa re sa ma re ma pa ni pa ma re ni re sa.
That was the first video. Are we still all here?
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, good, good. I just want to make, I can't see as I get my screen up. I want to make just a comment. I know we have a lot of lovers of India here. And generally, in the dance forms that core cultures work with, it's fair to call them endangered dance forms. And yet, in working on this and bringing the Indians in, Indian dancing is not endangered. It is robust. And I think you saw it just in these two dancers. Veena lives in the West, has a PhD from University of London. Sharon's a Jewish girl from Detroit that became a big celebrity as a classical dancer in India. There's academic and scholarly research around Indian dancing. There are arch conservative and orthodox exponents, and there's endless experimentation. And it really is a testimony to classical Indian dancing, and how strong that culture is, and how much, therefore, it's able to help these other cultures. So going forward, we're going into Nepal. And this video is called Inside the Mandala. It's produced by Yangchengma Arts and Music. Yangchengma is a Tibetan medicine farm in California that works with a famous Tibetan medicine lama and has an art component on the side. And they hosted all of our speaker series and our October 21 event with such professionalism and elegance and beauty. And they're very, very talented artists. And so I asked them, since they'd worked with Prajwal a lot. Now, Prajwal spoke to our Salon. If you remember Prajwal, I think he's spoken to us once. But Prajwal is the 35th generation dancer, and his tradition is most definitely endangered. And one of the places it's at, inflection points, is that the style of transmission, which was from your family, from your father and your uncles, for many, many, many generations, is now something being taught openly to the world. And on Prajwal's shoulders, a responsibility that he takes with incredible grace. Now, Barbara, I know, has seen a Mahakala dance in Ladakh. I think some of you have seen Buddhist dancing and monastic dancing. The Mahakala deity is a major deity in the exorcistic rituals of the Tantric Buddhists. But Mahakala is older than Buddhism. And Mahakala is certainly one of the deities that Buddhism keeps alive. I didn't know there was a Nepalese Newar version of Mahakala. One of the things that this project really emphasized for me was that dancers don't know each other. Indian dancers don't know ballet dancers, and Western dance research don't know Tibetan Buddhist scholars of movement. They're all out there, they just don't know each other. And so the conversations begin with an introduction. The other thing I learned was Buddhists don't know each other, meaning the Tibetan Buddhists don't know much about the Newar Buddhists and are thrilled to know this. Similarly, Tibetan monks and Newar priests don't necessarily know anything about classical Indian dancing. They probably know more about Bollywood because they see it more. So to have classical Indian dancing be brought to the monks, and to have the monks understand that there's these versions in Nepalese tradition and in Japanese tradition and in Indian and Himalayan traditions, this is news to most Buddhists, although it's not news. So bringing dancers together that normally have not communicated with each other in dialogue, and similarly letting Buddhists of different traditions come to know each other, has been really one of the strengths of the project. I've learned over the decades of work that when we show work to other people, say I make a video in Himachal Pradesh and I show it to some people in Ladakh, what they will notice is, look at the weaving of their textile. It's different than ours. Look at the way the collar is folded on the thing. They will notice every distinction of culture with great relish and great enjoyment. And so you can magnify that, imagining what spiritual traditions think of each other when they finally meet each other with great appreciation. So I did not think in the first year of this project that we would get a documentation of a very rare Himalayan dance from Kathmandu, Mahakala. You will see him in this dance in a blue form, quivering, quaking with so much energy, it's just bursting out of him. So please enjoy Inside the Mandala and a rare documentation of a Mahakala dance by Prajwal Bajracharya.
There is no way to be liberated without singing and dancing. Singing is the mantra, dancing is the meditation. My name is Prajul Ratna Bajracharya. I am from Kathmandu, Nepal, and I practice one of the oldest dance traditions in the world. For the thousands of years in Kathmandu, this dance had to be practiced in secret, only by the initiated. But now, everybody in the world can learn and benefit from it. I'm so blessed carry on my tradition. Even we have a crazy modernizations, crazy political situation, craziness, we are survive to keep continuous with our lineage. And even we hide it for thousands of years. It's not known until 1957. Every little movement is a complete awareness. Each movement has a meaning and a significance. In my tradition, the whole body is the mudra, not just the hand gesture. A gesture by itself is meaningless. You have to connect it to the body, speech, and mind with a full presence. And that leads to transformation and liberation. This dance gives you the healing of the body, speech, and mind, and bring a compassion, kindness, and a joyful way of living. The idea about the Vajrayana traditions is embodied as the deities and making the transformations. So the whole sadhana in a Charya dance as a spiritual discipline, whole sadhana is we bring it that as the deities and a move as the deities and a completely visualizations, we bring it to the body and it transforms your body. It became a trance. So my father has always quoted that way, when you start to dancing, you know anymore your own self. It's just the spirit will be moved and make you into transformations will be happening.
Kara ติขัดปาราขัดบาลัมโบดาราอาหายาเฮอาเฮหูนามามิสรี सर्वा भय हरणं संग्रामे परचक्र दुष्टनाशनम् आहय हे आहे
It's always a pleasure to see Prajwal dance at any time. And I think you could see the different way that mudra was used and the different type of spiritual expression, even from the first dance, the Indian onto the Newar in Nepal. And now I'm going to share the last piece. Is 10 minutes long. This was produced by a very dear friend of mine, Nathan Whitmont, who's one of the most eccentric people I know. He is a horseman and wilderness expert who lives in Montana and Wyoming or Patagonia or Alaska or the Himalayas, or he's an expert horseman of many traditions of traditional cultures, kinds of horsemanship. He can go live with nomads, and he lives in the wilds and does wilderness work almost entirely. And he was introduced to me by a professor at the University of Montana, and he has done some of the most extraordinary shooting for us in really terrible conditions at really high altitudes. And he's a great artist. He's a tough wilderness horseman, but he's a great sensitive artist and a real familiar with the Himalayas, and like me, just loves monks and loves the community of monks and loves how monks behave. And so this video is really the one most directly connected to Tabo Monastery, a Vajrayana monastic tradition, and also one of the prevalent thoughts in academia and in art history is that mudra is a pose of the hands, and it's not. Mudra is a movement of the hands. And when you see this video of the monks, Ocean of Mudra, I think you'll see just how vital and integrated the mudra are in the tradition of the Vajrayana monks. And so now I'm going to give you Ocean of Mudra. Okay. And here, you all with me?
Yep.
Okay, good. Here we go.
samayastam samayastam aham bandayam 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 aham bandayam
Well, I want to thank everybody for taking the time today to see our 3 videos.
Oh, thank you.
Joseph, that was so wonderful because especially on the final one, I've been to 3 of those.
Yes, you have.
They're magic.
Yeah, they are. I felt they captured some of the magic. He really did just a bang up job. And I just want to go back to saying that's because we gave him the instruction to be poetic. Don't rely on words. Look at and the result was so, I thought, overwhelming in a way, beautiful. But
oh, I love that.
Is that last one available? Is it on YouTube or somehow
no,
we can?
Where we are, these are great questions, Alan. And where we are, we just finished the first year. So these 3 beautifully professionally produced videos, we weren't even intending to make them. We took the travel budget and then we had won the Mullen Award and we did this instead. So this is the result of our planning year. We weren't even expecting it. So one of the issues, Alan, that anybody making research materials or having an archive of any kind deals with is how do you make it alive? How do you share an archive? What do you do with your research materials? How do you make them palatable? How do you get them to different communities that could actually benefit from them? One of the things about Corp Culture, we're a practical organization. We help dancers keep their dances going. That's what we do. It's really practical. Everything we do around it is to support that. And so we want to know now, what do we do with these? How do we repurpose them? We want to fold them into a class at UCI. We were designing a course, a college level course, using this material and the entire year's material. So the question, Alan, for us is, what's the best way to repurpose these? Should these be on the waterfalls downtown in Chicago? Should they be, should they be, we certainly are going to put them in film festivals, but even the lectures, we had 7 lectures that were just visually stunning over the course of the year. And how do we repurpose all of these things? So one of the challenges of a highly productive research year is how do you give legs to all that material and have it multiply and generate and procreate? And so that's a long-winded way of saying, I don't know, Alan, exactly what we're going to do. But I have to tell you something. Cheryl Smith, who was the former CIO of Verizon, is a really good friend of mine. She's this beautiful blonde, but she's a total geek. And so I love her, and I can call her anytime I want and ask her geeky questions. But she said, look, we had all these beautiful things in museums around the world. And she said, don't put it on YouTube. That's the only currency they've got. You know, so if you've got these things that are shown in museums, people have various ideas about this, you know, put everything on YouTube, don't put anything, save it for special showings. So this is the first time we've showed it today, Alan. And you're right on the money as usual. It's the question we're trying to figure out.
So Joseph, are these standalone films? And I have a reason for asking this.
Yes, they will be. They will be.
Okay, because the first one is kind of poetic and instructional, and I really like the way the dancers morph with the statuary, which is a way that people learned about ancient tradition, was to go back to the sculpture.
Right.
And the second one was a really almost an anthropological documentation of dance. Right. But that third one, wow. The third one is an art piece.
I agree.
And I think that's the one, if you're going to send them to, this is just my opinion, if you're going to send them to film festivals, send that as a standalone.
Oh, we will. Betty, I was trying not to introduce it by saying it's my favorite.
I know. Well, it's the one, because I'm not as informed, although I'm becoming more informed through knowing you and your experiences of these dances and your work with these dances. But from a purely aesthetic point of view, in terms of visuals, that was a stunning film.
I agree. And that's my crazy eccentric wilderness poet. It really is.
Then maybe that's what you need, is more crazy eccentric wilderness poets.
I couldn't agree.
It was really, maybe you have to be off the grid in order to think outside, pardon the mixed metaphor, to think outside the box, you have to be off the grid. Sorry about that, guys. I couldn't resist.
No, he went to UCI to help finish the editing. And he was like, God, people, forget it. You know, he went back to he's much more comfortable with animals and nature. And, you know, and so I think you're right. And he also has a great affinity because monks live in a pretty raw way. You know, it's a pretty elemental way they live. So thanks, Betty. I appreciate that. And I agree with you too.
Shama?
I had a question about your friend Prajwal.
So he
inherited the dance. The song that was sung, is that from his family too?
It's from the tradition. It's from the tradition. And it's a kind of ancient, oh gosh, I think the Vedic chanting was in the Indian dancing, and then the Newar chanting, but there's a term for that special chanting. So the dancing goes with it and the chanting goes with it. So yeah, it is all passed down in that same tradition.
I would very much like to know, many of this, when he was dancing in that blue outfit,
yeah,
one of the things that he had wrapped around him, it depicted a tiger skin. So
I have the same question.
Yeah, it's Shiva.
Shiva. Then he used the word Krishna Varna, which is blue skin. Then he goes on to sing, what is it? Not the word for Ganesh. I forgot the word.
Ganapati.
No.
Elephant.
Blue cloud. Wait, it's not. No. It calls out in the song itself.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, Lambodara. That's the term I was trying to remember. There's a song. It's a call out in the middle of the song. Lambodara. He's singing it. So the whole song that is accompanying a Buddhist dance is full of Hindu references. I was like, why?
Well, why? Because actually, tantric Buddhism, if you look at it, it's all the Hindu deities. It's most unquestionably Shiva. And you'll go to a Buddhist monastery and you'll see a trident. They'll come out with a trident. You know, you see Guru Rinpoche carrying a trident. You see Shiva symbology all over the place. And it's funny, Shoma, because some scholars today say, well, there's no deity, non-Buddhist deities. Well, they're all non-Buddhist deities. They're all, Buddhism kept these ancient deities alive with this kind of power. So you're absolutely right. It's absolutely, and all the more reason to look at the Indian tradition. I
was just going to say, you know, like terms like Manjushri and all of that, they're completely Hindu association. But if somebody is watching it for the first time, someone who, like, you know, Betty and then you guys will all know these, but somebody brand new, like a Hindu, will I'm telling you in context of Modi government, they'll start branding and screaming, you're appropriating Hinduism. I think it might be interesting to just move forward and leap forward and say, no, this is all part of the traditions that came in. So that, then they suddenly don't create an unnecessary side comment.
I think you're right. And this is kind of where, Veena was saying, maybe religion's not the best word to understand these traditions and how they morphed and changed and grew. And, we certainly see in Japan, they don't care. And you see the Chinese, the vinegar tasters, Confucius and Buddha and Lao Tzu all tasting the vinegar, basically describing bitter reality with different words, but they're all dipping into the vinegar. So I sort of think that the Westerners are much more about all this knowledge as separation than the actual embodiment on the ground. And certainly the monks and the Nepalese tantric priests and the dancers in India, they don't have any problem with each other. They're fascinated. They're mutually fascinated by each other.
Nepal is Hindu, so it helps. But outside, depending on where you're showing, it would be an interesting thing to see what people say.
Absolutely.
It's fine in Nepal, it's a Hindu country with huge Buddhist, but outside in India, with all the rabidness that goes on in India now, depending on who you're showing, that might be something
that happens. There are some people that to this day believe that Buddhism is just a branch of Hinduism. That Buddhism, and one of the reasons they say that is because Buddha was Hindu and he carries on all these deities are kept alive, and Tibetan deities are also kept alive. Or pre-Buddhist Tibetan deities are also kept alive in Buddhism. It's sort of one of the anthropological marvels of Buddhism is it didn't annihilate things that came before it. It assimilated it. And one of the reasons I think that's why artists are so attracted to Buddhism, because they don't feel they have to stop being what they are to join this kind of larger spiritual, a scene that gives them a larger venue of thought. So I think that looking at how the people themselves are not having a problem with the religious expression, seeing it as a cultural expression of their own. So I agree with you, Shoma. That's a good point.
Merle?
I've never thought this before. It's fairly basic, but when you talk about the specificity of all the mudras and the nuance between a particular formation and how precision is absolute requirement, if the community that would normally see these dances views them as opposed to us, would they be in tune with all the very, very specific meanings?
No, they wouldn't. And I think that any more than a Buddhist going to see him dance would, any more than a Catholic going to Catholic Mass and knowing every single gesture, they wouldn't. And that's one of the interesting things when you go into these communities, they'll know when they need help, but they're not sure why you're so interested in their tradition. Like, we just do it. We don't do it because it's so amazing. We just do it. You think it's so amazing, but we're just trying to do it. And so there's a learning curve. And one of the things in talking with the Ho Foundation, which has invested a lot in Buddhist art and Buddhist academics and Buddhist intellectual work, in looking at this, is that, well, these are ways to be looking at these in a way that maybe such as you're describing, Merle, in a different kind of approach to maybe we should not be thinking everything's got to go to a Western museum. Maybe we should be taking this to the Buddhist communities. So one of the things that seems shocking in 2022, that if we take Prajwal to Tabo Monastery from Nepal to Himachal Pradesh, not very far, it would be the first time in history that a Nepalese tantric priest ever went to Tabo, ever. Okay, now the Western experts at Tabo honestly believe that they taught the Dalai Lama what was at Tabo, that he didn't know what was there until they figured it out. All right? And so I think, well, let's just send Prajwal to Tabo and see if he can figure it out. I bet he can, or he'll make some sense of it anyway. And they do it in a very collegial fashion. People are very delighted to learn of one another. This Vajradhatu ritual at Tabo exists in Nepal earlier, and the monks don't even know that. So they're delighted to learn that. So it's a different approach to learning other people's culture. There's an enthusiasm, but part of it is teaching Buddhism to Buddhists. And one thing, go on, Merle.
No, go ahead.
One thing the Ho Foundation does, Ho Foundation has two main thrusts. One is Buddhism, and the other is teaching Chinese culture to Chinese people. Okay, that's their other thrust. And so I think teaching Buddhist history to Buddhists makes sense. And actually the monks, what happened in this project, Merle, was we couldn't go to Tabo. All right, we weren't because of COVID. All right, we got a couple of trips for information, but we couldn't go do the work. And so 4 other monks all talk to each other. They all know everything about everything. So when it was known that our project was happening, we couldn't go to Tabo, 4 monasteries stepped up from different sects and said, we'll help. You can watch we don't have the same thing, but it's close. Come and watch us. Come and watch us. Come and watch us. So all those monks you saw were whole monasteries stepping up, saying, we'll help you save the ritual at Tabo. We'll help you do it, and we'll bring our top ritual master, and we'll prepare special things for you. So the community of all monks trying to help monks, the monks have come and said, this is so amazing because we don't even know this. We haven't even looked in this so different. So, and also it's just to point out, it's very Western thing to say, we're going to look at mudra. Okay, well, they would never look at their tradition and say, let's just look at the mudra. But it gives us a handle, and it gives us a door opening. And once you've got that, then they're really on board with exploring it. And so that's one of the ways we help the traditions, is by revving up enthusiasm for their own tradition. And another person once said, all you really need to do is reinstill pride in their tradition. People will lose a tradition if they're embarrassed of it, or if they're not proud of it anymore. And so part of it is to get this enthusiasm rolling, which this project really did. And you could see it in that last video by how many monasteries were involved. But that's a really good question. And it sort of changes, it's a philanthropic question. Is the money to bring things to Western institutions, or is the money to be used over there for them? I mean, it's a different approach to how the money is spent and who receives the benefit of the work. So these videos will definitely be shown at Tabo Monastery in June of this year when we're creating a symposium there. So that's one place they'll go.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Shari?
This is a very basic question. The hand movements, are they words that they're saying with their hands?
Very good question. Are they wordless words they're saying with their hands? Because what you're talking about, Shari, what you're asking is it sign language?
Mm-hmm.
It's mystical sign language. I've called mudra the esoteric sign language of the ancient world. All right. And I heard one scholar said something so brilliant that the reason Zen took off in Japan was because the best teachers came from China to teach it, and the Japanese monks couldn't speak Chinese. Okay, so they hit him on the head, and they kicked him, and they did stuff. They held up flowers, and they communicated with this broken Chinese to learn Zen. So Zen had to become really practical. So I think that you've got to ask, and it's certain things, because Prajwal will say, oh, movement means nothing. You have to give it the meaning. But they'll say things like put on a shawl, hold up the bowl. You know, that's a lot of mime in mudra, actually. But some of it is also completely abstract, and there's channels connected with every finger. So depending on which fingers I connect, I'm connecting different energies in my body that go through my whole body. So I can turbocharge my body elementally by what I do with my fingers. And so this kind of thing is like, well, if I'm going to teach you something, Shari, that's inexpressible. And it's really important thing to teach. How do you communicate it? Well, one of the things I like about these 3 videos is they all end in this like, they all end with this like total self, this madness of whatever there was going on. At the end is like sort of a breathtaking silence in each case. And we were talking about silence in opera and other things and the quality of silence. You know, Mar was talking Antarctica on the quality of silence. Well, we saw today 3 qualities of silence. So maybe you do the mudra, you learn the silence. I don't know. I don't think it's like this means that, this means this. I don't think that. And when you see them doing it like so freewheeling, you know, the monks really do it in a very freewheeling way almost. You have to think that it's not, it's moving, it's not stopping and expressing. But the thing that's so interesting is this 1,000-year-old ritual is kept with the greatest accuracy in Japan, not in India or the Himalayas. And what we're learning is because the Japanese are totally secret about everything. So one of the things we're exploring is what's the relationship of secrecy to transmission and accuracy of transmission.
Wow.
So it's a very good question, but what's remarkable was 1,000 years later, we can compare contemporary ritual practice with 1,000-year-old statues. All right, and see if they still correspond, and they do. And this is really, it's very interesting. So I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No.
No, so that's one of the things about it.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Alexander?
Oh, you're muted, Alexander, if you're going to say something.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I
I
can.
can.
In the last video, there was a monk in the courtyard who was enacting some mudras, but without being connected to any other kind of ritual. There's no music. What was your understanding of what he was doing? I mean, was that functional?
This guy doing this one, this guy squatting.
Yeah, he was wearing the spectacles. He was wearing kind of the dark glasses.
Okay.
And the footage kept coming back to him. And then
Oh.
every once in a while, people were kind of encircling him, and then he was laughing with them. What's your understanding of what he was doing?
Well, in that, if you remember, they're wearing their monk robes and they had coats on and stuff. They're practicing, they're rehearsing. Okay. And what's interesting too is basically a monastery's got 3 leaders. They have the abbot, then they have the guy who's in charge of ritual, and then they have the engineer who runs the plant. Okay. They basically run a monastery. So when the monks of Matho Monastery, and that's where that guy was from, Matho Monastery, when they heard that Thabo couldn't participate because of COVID, their Dorji Lopan, and these are huge institutions, said, we'll help. He's the Dorji Lopan. He's the guy that's responsible for all of the ritual transmissions accuracy. All right. So he's teaching it to a mid-monk and he's teaching it to young monks. So he's teaching, they're going over to rehearsal in the snow. That's why they've got their normal robes on. So they're practicing. So he's teaching the mudra, he's teaching the little steps to the people in that clip.
Shoma?
Hey, Shoma, go ahead.
Since you're in the research phase, I would love to know, you mentioned this last week, the bone pose that preceded the Buddhists. A lot of them, I think the Buddhist practices try to either dismiss them or just ignore them or just dampen them. If you're having archives, wouldn't that be interesting to archive all that? Because up in those regions, Mustang and all of those regions, that they have some leftover of bone pose. There is research going on because they have all those pamphlets there to document that, because there's hardly something there. Because I find it interesting to imagine all the death masks that they had at the bone pose. What of that influenced the current Buddhist mask? There might be, not just with the rituals, the artistic traditions that came down, because the story of a...
Well, Shoma, when you looked at the monks dancing, does it look Indian to you?
I'm sorry?
The monks dancing in the last video. It doesn't look Indian, does it? It's not an Indian kind of dancing. So the question is, well, where did this dance come from? Because the mythological origins are kind of murky. But it's everything. You can tell the mudras from India, the Sanskrit's from India, but the movement doesn't seem to be Indian. Prajwal's movement looks Indian in a way, looks derived from Indian movement, but the Tibetan monks don't. So even questions like, where did this movement come from? It seems to have either been invented out of thin air or was repurposed, or it was, as a lot of, the deities of Bun deities, the story show me is that they were entranced by dancing into stop attacking the first temple. All right. So the dance is what made them now, all the pre-Buddhist deities are now work for Buddhism. They call them Dharmapala, but they didn't kill them. They didn't wipe them out. They just made them work for Buddhism. And the dancing is the way that they were initially sort of brought into the fold, you might say. So there's a connection there too.
Interesting.
Joseph,
Yes.
I'm sure you've answered this before, but how did you get into this?
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. Prajwal asked me to give a talk for the 12th anniversary of his temple, and he said, I want you to talk about your life. And I don't normally. I was out in a nutshell. I danced professionally, and when I started dancing professionally, it was a different era, and dancers didn't go to college. And I was very well educated. And at that time, I was like 30-year-old ballet dancers became florists or hairdressers or dance teachers. All right. Basically, but basically because they didn't go to education, they sacrificed their education to be ballet dancers. And that's changed now a little bit, but not completely. And I was like, gosh, I don't want to be that at 30. And I liked my education. I liked Greek. I liked Latin. I liked the humanities. I loved it. So I went back to school at 22. I went to school at 22. And there was Bill Mullen, his sister is here today. It was a great expert in Greek tragedy and Greek tragic dancing and the dances of the first Olympics of the Pindaric Odes. And he was like, gosh, I've been waiting for a choreographer because I know all the rhythms. I can teach you the scansion. We can practice the Greek. So one of the first things I choreographed was a section of Greek tragedy in ancient Greek that I did with Bill Mullen, and I choreographed it. And I was so interested in this unity, the architecture, the civic purpose, the dancing, the poetry, the literature, everything all together. What happened to that? And then the more I studied Greek tragedy, the more I realized they lost the dancing. We lost our connection. Yeah, we even have the rhythms of the dance, but we don't have the dancing.
In those very tall shoes.
Exactly. And so why I was just bereft. Why this one ancient great thing we've got everything else except the dancing. And in my junior year, this poet that was at school from southern United States, he came to me and said, hey, it was a very small school. Everybody knew what everybody was doing. He said, Joe, I know you're upset about Greek tragedy losing its connection to its dances. I said, yes, I am. And he said, well, there's this thing called no theater. And he knew it because of Fenellosa and Ezra Pound and W.B. Yeats. He knew it through poetry. And he said, and he gave me the books, and he gave me the Donald Keene translations, and he gave me the beautiful other translations by Arthur Whaley. And he said, Joe, it still exists. It never died out. It's not 2,000 years old, but it's 800 years old, And I went to Japan for 6 weeks on a grant, and I stayed for 7 years. And you start when you get your first taste, and some of you work in India, when you get your first taste of an ancient tradition, it's endless and endless and endless. And I say, if Prajwal wanted to go into tradition more deeply, he could do it for the rest of his life because his tradition allows that much richness. And it's very much, I left Japan after 7 years, and I knew a lot more about Japan when I went there than when I left. By the end, it was like, I have no idea what Japanese culture is about. It's absolutely mad. But you begin to see what an ancient culture is. Also, if you're going to learn the master-student relationship that is so fundamental in all of Asia, the strictest version of it is the Japanese sensei. That is the strictest version of that. I know Japanese sensei like this. I know my Japanese sensei drill. Everything in Asia is easier after that. You can understand lamas and teachers and dance teachers and monks and priests. It's all easier to do than Japanese sensei. Japanese sensei is really strict. So I learned about this, and then I learned there were these dances, these ancient dances with these great traditions. And then I learned they needed help, and I would look and like, you guys have the most basic choreography problem, or you have the big thing now, Shari, is didactics. because it's a different generation and they don't teach it the same way. That's basically the issue at Tabo. They taught it, but it didn't really stick. And so what we come in is introduce workshops, intense ritual training. We come in with a new didactic model to help them learn it. So that's a bit of how we take the approach to that. Does that answer your question a little bit?
It's getting there.
Sorry, Ellen. Sorry, I was switched over to you. Yeah, go on. Say more about what you're, because I'd like to try to answer you well.
I have to sign off, guys. So bye.
Bye.
Have
Nice
a
to see you.
beautiful week.
You too. Thanks a million.
Thank you, Joseph. This was great.
Oh, you bet.
Beautiful.
You bet. Yeah.
No, I guess my question, and I do remember that this answer from, I think I once asked the same question of you.
Yeah.
But I'm always fascinated by the obsessions that we all have. And,
Absolutely. Well. So when I saw these, I met a monk on the beach in front of my house in Chicago, in Rogers Park. Okay, when I was meditating.
Monk on the beach. Okay.
Yeah, 2 months, and I called them into my house. They have tea, and I had all Japanese furniture, all low tables. And I knew how to make tea because I lived in Asia, so I called them both in. I thought I told you guys the story. And so we sit down, and I give the monks tea, and it was an old monk and a young monk, and I'm feeling pretty good. And the old monk says, "Why aren't you at work?" And I said, why I am at work. And he said, "Well, what do you do?" And I was working on this very cool project with the Japan Society in New York, where we were taking digitized ancient sculptures and then motion capturing movement of dancers and putting the movement into the statues. Okay, so I thought I was just cool as hell, right? So I'm telling these 2 monks, well, this is my project, right? And the young monk says, "Oh, I think my brother will do that." And I'm like, "Oh, why do you think your brother will do that? Who's your brother?" And he struggles for a word and he asks for a dictionary. So I give him a dictionary. He's like, "Reincarnate." "Oh, your brother's reincarnated." Yes. And I'm like, "Oh, well, great. Well, why do you think that he would do this project? Is he a dancer?" And they both bow their heads. And the old monk says, "He's the best dancer in many generations."
Oh.
And then I said, "Where are you guys from? Tibet?" And the young one says, "No, we are from Ladakh." I had never heard of Ladakh. Okay, so we get the atlas, no Ladakh. We get the globe, no Ladakh. But I believed them. Okay, I didn't think they were. And then so we're sitting there with our tea, and the old monk takes his finger and points it right at my third eye. And he says, "You come to Ladakh." So I went to Ladakh the next summer, and I'll just give you this little next leg of the story because it's good. I go to Ladakh, I get to Lama Yuru. The roads were no good then. You remember, Barbara, it took a half a day to get to Lama Yuru. So I get to Lama Yuru, and this cloud of robes comes coming down the mountain of all ages. Okay, and this 8-year-old takes my huge trunk and throws it on his back and starts running up the mountain, and they're shoving me and running up the mountain, and they put me in the monastery, and they shove me to the monastery, and they get me all the way to the top of the monastery where the young reincarnated dancing abbot is. And it was his brother that I met in Chicago. So I get in there and like, "Take your shoes up, take your shoes up." Okay, they like shove me on the ground. So I'm in there and I look up and he's on his throne and I just burst out laughing. And he's like, "What's so funny?" He spoke English. He said, "What's so funny?" I said, "You look exactly like your brother." And he said, "I know. Do you have your own face?"
Oh.
Okay. And then
wonderful.
he jumps off the throne, grabs my hand. He was 23. I was 40. Grabs my hand and takes me to the roof of the monastery and says, "Show me the hardest dance thing you know." Okay.
On the roof.
On the roof. Okay. And then he wanted to know if I could break dance. Okay.
Oh.
So for those of you that know dancing, I did a double pirouette into a 5/4 swing. Okay. Pretty good for an old man. I did that. And I said, "What's the hardest thing you know?" So then he did some, clever thing. And we just became good buddies, and I'd do anything to help any of these guys. But it was then that the head of the order had heard about me, and I was watching things, looking at the didactics, looking at the rehearsal, looking at the whole operation of a kind of dancing I'd never seen before. And the head of the order, Chetsang Rinpoche, said, "Would you come back next year and make a documentary?" And I have mixed feelings about documentaries. Sometimes they can really get lost. Really good ones can just get lost in the mist, and you never know what happens to them. So I said, what my father would often say, "What's your real question?" Okay. And I said, well, "What's your real question?" And he said, "The real question is our order has 15 monasteries, and 11 of them are in Tibet. One's in Nepal and 3 are in Ladakh. And the dance tradition is being systematically eradicated in Tibet. And we want to do something for them." So the first thing Core Culture ever did was we made a visual glossary of all the steps, step by step, like a step-by-step instruction. Plus we had a teacher come and give a teaching. We made a DVD and we smuggled it into Tibet. That was the first thing we did. And we showed it in museums later, but its purpose was to help keep the tradition continuing in Tibet. And so that was the very first thing we did. And we all became very good friends. And it was also, Alan, a really big moment where, you're taught in the West, it's about you, and you're going to be an entertainer, you're going to be a performer, you're going to be an artist, whatever. And then you meet these people that have these ancient traditions. And you think, how the hell can I stand in front of you? And so I'm Joseph Houseal of Core Culture. I'm here to introduce the 35th generation. No, shut up, get off the stage and put the monk in front and talk about the monk. I had a good career. I had a great career, on the stage. They need help. And you see these people, I admire them so much. You have no idea how much I admire all these people. I would do anything I could to help them. So that's kind of how I got to this place of helping these endangered traditions. It's a really amazing thing to be brought into it, to be brought inside the bosom of these traditions.
That kind of serendipity of, meeting the monks on the beach. It's not
karma.
serendipity.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Meeting Alan Teller, meeting Barbara Kipper, all this like serendipity. There is.
But talk about the coincidence. Remember, we talked a couple of weeks ago about there's no such thing as coincidence. If you hadn't taken that walk on the beach, it's very possible that none of this would have happened.
That's right.
Absolutely. And also my teacher died in 2017 at 88. And he was both a dance master and the meditation master for the people in retreats in the mountains. So if somebody was on a 7-year retreat, it was his job basically to make sure they don't go insane. Hello. And he was that, and he was the dance master. But one thing he told me, I would always say, "God, I'm your worst student. I want to go do a retreat in a cave." And he's like, no, you work now. I'll get you a cave later. Now you work. And I got a cave later, but he wanted me to do the work. But the one thing he said to me, I was like, "God, what good am I with Buddhism?" And he said, "You teach the boys." That's all he said. But when I'm doing things like helping my friend with his daughter, or going with John Porter, or doing these other things, I sort of feel like, you teach the boys. Mm-hmm. You go teach stillness. You go teach impermanence. You go teach compassion. You teach the boys. You got a connection with boys. You go teach the boys. So I don't do that specifically, but it comes to mind once in a while. You think of it. So.
It's great. It's great. And I know Sharon Lowen, and she's great. And, she had her Fulbright and went to study dance in India and never came back.
Never came back. She'd be a great speaker for the Salon. I should ask her.
Can you get her?
Oh, yeah. And
she's great.
Yeah, and she could talk about the Jewish experience in India, too. Yeah. It'd be really interesting. But I owe Sharon's
view of India.
Exactly. But I believe her mother is buried in a Jewish cemetery in India, if I'm not mistaken. Her mother died at 103, I think. So, yeah. And the Dalai Lama was very fond of her mother. And she used to say, "My mother's friends with the Dalai Lama." Not me, my mother. That's with my mother. But yeah, so I feel very fortunate for all these connections and very committed to these people who I think, I'm more freaked out about Nepalese dancing than Prajwal is. Prajwal, they're all very serene and very accepting of life and very accepting of their tradition. And so, it's a nice, I'm very grateful for the position I find myself in with these great exponents, to tell the truth. Yeah.
Well, they're lucky to have found you.
Oh, you're very sweet. You're very sweet. But yeah, I just think there's so much to give, and there's so much left. And it's like these things that have just left, like you're talking about, our bar mitzvah's gonna go extinct. I doubt it. You know what I mean? It's just like, I doubt it. Maybe, probably not, So it's sort of like, it's almost hard to conceive something that's in living memory. You can't ever not think of it, that dying out. But we're kind of asking some of those questions now about generations of teaching and things like that.
Well, it's interesting that you bring it back to the bar mitzvah, because a lot of the of current modern bar mitzvahs have just devolved into parties.
Yeah.
And there's not that same understanding of the meaning of it.
Right.
And and our kids had their bar and bat mitzvahs, and they've gone to these very hokey bar mitzvahs, and they come back just shaking their heads and saying, this is just dumb. People just dancing and having a party, and it has absolutely no substance at all.
Yeah.
And so that's the danger. It's not that it'll disappear, but it'll be so transformed to become meaningless.
Yeah, I agree. It's a very interesting thing when you look at something like mudra, because you want to say something universal about it that might be too bland. And by that, I mean, like, ritual is consoling, period. It is. Ritual is just a consoling thing. I'm at my cottage now, and I'm a stone's throw from this nice woodsy little Catholic church right over there. And there's this very dedicated priest out here that does mass every day of the week. Okay, how these guys out here in these little parishes do, that's really a lot of ritual work. So if I'm out here during the week, I always go to mass, because he's so old-fashioned and he does everything by the book, and it's a pain in the ass to do that. And he just does it every day. And I have such appreciation for everything he's doing, And I'm not a practicing Catholic anymore, but the ritual's consoling. And there's a lot of good things there, And so I just think, you don't want to talk too broadly about ritual or mudra till it doesn't mean anything. But I think that there is something powerful about ritual itself. And it's a shame if we throw out the baby with the bathwater, if the ritual gets thrown out with the religion, or the religion throws out the ritual, So I appreciate what you're saying about the bar mitzvahs and how they've changed a little bit.
What's interesting about, so I grew up Orthodox, and now I'm a part of a Reform congregation. And what's very interesting is that when I was growing up, the Reform movement, it was like, it was hardly, we considered it hardly being Jewish at all, right? They had an organ, they were doing things on Sunday, you don't wear a yarmulke, you can eat whatever the hell you want, on and on and on. And it was kind of empty. And the Reform movement started slowly to pick and choose and to bring back a lot of the rituals and a lot of the traditions, because without it, it just became kind of empty.
Right.
If you go too much in the other direction, then it becomes oppressive. And so, if you can make some kind of a balance where you honor the tradition, you honor the culture, but you allow for the freedom of the individual to interpret it to the best of their, what's useful to them and respectful, then I think the tradition can continue. So you don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater, nor do you want to be so doctrinaire, that it loses the passion.
Well, but you're onto another big issue, and that is one thing the project wants to tackle is, what does it mean to transmit something authentically? Does it mean you imitated the shape of it, or it means that you spent your life dedicated to it, and now I'm going to give it to you, and I'm going to give it to you the way that my life learned this, and I'm going to teach it to you, and that's what's authentic. And then you dedicate your life to it, and you pass it on with your full spirit. That's what's authentic, not doing this. Yeah. And so it's very interesting to say that that's what's being transmitted. And maybe mudras, they found out, are just a really effective ancillary language to communicate those kinds of things. But even in Taoism, they say if you teach the old teaching, it's like using a boat to act like a car. It won't work.
I grew up Reform, and I was probably Jewish because of my grandmother, because it felt good. But when I was up at Michigan and it was the high holidays, I didn't want to be in the dorm. And I went over to Rackham Hall for the services. I think it was Yom Kippur. And here was a whole aspect of my religion, my tradition, that I knew nothing about. And, you know, walking the Torahs around, and I felt my religion had discovered me.
Interesting. But we were in Beth Emet, the free synagogue. And that's what the free meant. We could interpret it any way we wanted to.
I'm still in Beth Emet.
I know you are.
Joseph, I have a question. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I'll wait.
Well, my only comment that I wanted to make, Joseph, when you were talking about the transmission, rather than do it in some kind of an orthodox doctrinaire way, but to do it from your lived experience and then passing that on, the last film did not need words.
Right.
But you felt the understanding of the culture and the tradition.
Well, this goes back to what Betty was saying, the artistry of it. And I you know, it's funny as they use a poem to inspire you to not use any words.
Yes.
And then of course, oh, can I use 7 words? Okay, you can use 7 words, you know, and they say, but it's very interesting that the one that didn't use words, I think finally packs the most wallop, you know. I hear you, yeah.
I was going to ask you, I did not know your scholarly background and that your love of Greek. Did you, Madhu told me this, and I tried to look up stuff, that the trident comes from Poseidon in Greece.
I don't know if there's any connection between Shiva and Poseidon, but Poseidon is the trident in Greek mythology, yes.
No, there is, according to her. And
oh, really? Wow.
Yes, because most Hindu original deities have no form, they're formless. So Shiva was never shown in form till the Greeks kept coming along, you know, just to show, here I am, I exist too, because it's the Brahmanda, the original signs of Hinduism are all formless. So Shiva was pretty much, if at all, the lingam. There was no, or not even the lingam, there was no trident till Poseidon connection. So I thought, with your love of Greeks, here's a connection to the Himalayan area that you like.
I'll have to talk to her. I don't know anything about it. That's very interesting.
You will find it in numismatics. You'll see the first, I got that far, but she'd probably have more, and you'll be able to access more with all the people that you know. So in the world of numismatics, you'll see that, how the form of Shiva came about, you know, with his matted locks. It's like more and more Poseidon if you really clearly look at it. But you, with your background in Greece and all your, in Greek, sorry, and your all your work in Himalayas would be a perfect conduit to really figure that out.
It'd be fun to figure. It'd be fun to figure. I'll have to chat with Madhu about that. I don't know about that. That's very interesting. Thank you for telling me that. Yeah. No, it's funny too. I'm trying to think where I was when I saw this. Like, I went to this thing and was, oh, you got to go to the shrine of the Mother Goddess. There's this Hindu shrine of the Mother Goddess. You have to go. So I go, and it's just a huge fucking rock with like stuff splattered all over it and a piece. It was amazing. I think this is the best. Finally something to believe in, you know. But I saw this thing, and it was so great because it was absolutely amorphous. It was bigger than shape, you know. It was just amazing. But I didn't know that the original form of the Hindu deities was formless. I love that. But I'll never forget a couple of these Hindu things I've seen that are just so abstract, just completely abstracted out. Yeah.
The term for it is Nir Akar. Nir Akar Brahma does not have form. That's why you have so many billion forms of Hinduism. None of them actually count. You cannot discount any of them. But I'm very curious as to, Alan, what you said about finding rituals, bringing them back, and what Barbara said, you went back to high holidays. I'll bet both of you will find that spirituality, even if you show up in a Hindu temple or his Catholic temple or a mosque. Isn't it mainly inside you that you've discovered in the other, wherever you show up? Yeah,
it's inside you, but it's prompted by other things that
It's like a wonderful cooking odor.
Oh, oh, that's lovely.
Absolutely.
yeah, you need some hints. You need
Yeah.
some guides, basically, and that kind of gets you on on
You
a
know,
certain
because
path.
sitting next to my grandmother
Yeah.
always felt wonderful. And she was, she made me feel my religion because she loved it so deeply. And, you know, watching my parents who were nominal and mom was not a believer at all, and that's fine.
Yeah,
I had my grandmother.
that's right. No, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. But I think, Alan, I think one of the things in looking at traditions, you know, if it's formally accurate or if it's the actual authenticity is a personal one, is a very interesting thing because scholars, and we work with a lot of scholars, think like, well, no, the authenticity is all corrupted. It's all corrupted, you know, because it isn't exactly the same. They're not doing exactly the same thing. Well, you know, they weren't doing ballet the same way 100 years ago or 200 years ago or 400 years ago. It's still ballet. It's obviously ballet. It's characteristically ballet, and it's not done the same way they did it in the 1600s because that's not how living arts work. And so
evolve.
Right. And so this is the kind of thing, but this is a crazy idea for scholars. What we want accuracy, we can tell is accurate. We're none of this invisible accuracy. You know, we want accuracy we can count on our fingers. And so that's one of the things. And like, no, one of the scholars was sort of like saying, well, you can't tell me what's done at Tabo today. It was the same thing done 1,000 years ago. And I said, no one's suggesting that. No one would suggest it. And the question doesn't matter to the monks. It matters to the Westerners. Yeah. So they're very interesting questions. And we're trying to learn more about it and find good words to talk about it. That's what.
And I still go back to the wonderful film, The Gods Must Be Crazy.
I love that. Yeah.
I was laughing when you were saying this, Barbara, when you said you had your grandmother to find religion, and you appreciate the joke, Joseph. I kept.
Oh, okay.
I have Mara, my little devil, sitting right there as a reminder to religion everywhere. Oh, Mara. Yeah, you.
You know, but it wasn't so much religion because I'm not religious.
Right.
But it was community. It was peoplehood. It was history.
It's a connection. It's a connection to the people before you and the people around you and the people that come after you.
And couldn't you see that in the last video?
Yes.
You could see that how the whole community was characteristically joyous, characteristically committed, characteristically connected to one another. And that's a hard thing to show. So but it's exactly what you're describing, Barbara. It's exactly that.
I just sent you some images from those monasteries.
Oh, thank you.
The dance in
Hemes and Mato and Lama. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
And did your friend have a religion? The one who videotaped, is he Buddhist or is he Catholic? Is he Jewish?
No, he's this well, one of the second photographer was an ex-monk, but the wilderness guy was the main photographer on that monastic one. And no, I think his religion is nature. You know? Yeah, that's what I think.
You can see that.
Yeah. Oh, the opening, Barbara, I was thinking of you at the opening shot of the mountains.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you know that. Yes. You know that's really, and it's so silent. It starts out so silent. So
you know, when I was up there the last time, and I knew it was the last time, it was an incredibly moving moment saying goodbye to the mountains.
Yep. That look different every single time you look at it.
Absolutely.
Completely different colors, everything. Yeah. So
one of our participating artists in the Following the Box project is Prabir Pukriastra, and he has devoted his life to photographing in Ladakh.
Wow.
And he has
what's his name again?
Prabir Pukriastra.
Oh, yeah. I just didn't know how to pronounce it correctly.
So that's our one of, we're very close friends. He's great.
Wow.
And he actually gave us, I guess I didn't tell the story ever, but so when we were trying to raise money for the project, because we still had the exhibit in India, I guess, or we were just developing the exhibit, and so Prabir wrote to us and he said, listen, I had an exhibit in Chicago many years ago, and the gallery owner never returned all the photos to me that she didn't sell. Do you remember the story?
I think you showed me the book at your house.
Oh, yes, I did. Yes, that's right. He's a phenomenal book. But so what Prabir did was he said, look, could you just do me a favor and call up the, gallery owner and have her return, the stuff? And he said, well, actually, what you can do is pick 10 of the pictures or something and, they're yours. So I called up this woman who I knew actually, and it wasn't malicious. She closed the gallery and she just hadn't gotten around to, for years, just hadn't gotten around to sending it back. And so I asked her, well, okay, what size, is the material? So I'll come over with a portfolio case. And she said, oh, you don't need to come over with a portfolio case. They're all crated up. And I said, crated up? Why would they be crated up? And so, okay, so we went over there and discovered 4 crates filled with his photographs.
Wow.
And we came back and we opened them, and they're gorgeously crafted crates. And we opened them up, and there were 127 photographs, not a dozen. 127 is exactly the same number of the negatives that we found of the following project, right? So we call up Prabir and say, listen, it's not just a dozen photos, it's 127. And he said, oh, wow, I guess I forgot about that. And I said, so would you like us to pick, like 10 or something and send the rest to you? He said, no. He said, this is a really important project. Keep them all and sell them, to raise money for the project.
Fantastic.
Which is amazing. So,
it's the gold mine. You found a discovered treasure.
It's pretty great. And his photos of Ladakh, as you saw that, it's a coffee table book that's gigantic and stunning. Absolutely stunning work.
Yeah.
So I feel like I've been to Ladakh. I would love to go to Ladakh. I'd love to travel anywhere again, actually.
I'm sending you all a picture of the Yeti I saw in Ladakh.
Well, thank God. We need some proof, Barbara.
When I was in Ladakh long before digital photography, and this conversation has inspired me. I have 35 millimeter slides. I'm going to go dig them out and see what I have.
Do. Yep. We've got, well, speaking of that, Herbert Migdal, who we brought to Bhutan, the dance photographer of the Joffrey for many years, we brought him to Bhutan to take photos of monks, and he did at this one Zong. He did, but he was experimenting with panoramic film and photography.
Right.
And he took all these panoramic photos and gave us all the negatives and never did anything with them. So we've got all these photographs.
That's Herb.
That's Herb. Exactly. Gosh, I'm so glad everybody came today. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Thank you, Joseph.
This was wonderful.
Just terrific.
Films. I have tried learning some of the mudras. It's not.
I was doing it too while they were dancing.
Yeah.
But it's not intuitive.
No, I don't think so either. No. So, well, anyway, what a great! I'm so. I hope you see the influence of this salon on my work, because I was in the salon during this whole project development.
Wow.
And Prajwal talked to you and Tinless, so you all sort of know what I'm doing, and my people know the salon, and all of my friends know about this salon. They don't know what it is. And all of my friends know about this salon that's on Sunday. So I want to thank you very much for all the influence
This
you
was
had.
wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right. Bye, everybody.
Okay, we'll see you later. Bye.
Great afternoon.